Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast. Join your host, Nicole Cox, as she dives into the real stories, tips, secrets, and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside the trade world. Nick is here to help you break free from the grind, reduce money stress, and build a trade business that truly works for you. So grab a brew, put your phone on silent, and get ready to be inspired.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast. I have another amazing guest for you today. Not that you'll be surprised because, as usual, you will have read the bio before you jumped in today, unless you were lucky enough that it just scrolled on in your feed, and here I am, you're listening to me. So welcome. Today, I am joined by Nick Stephen from Yoo-Hoo, which is one of the coolest business names I think I've ever come across, and it really leaves you guessing because you've got absolutely no idea just yet, unless you've read the bio, what we're going to be talking about today. Nick, thank you so much for making some time for me.
My pleasure. Lovely to chat with you, Nicole.
Wonderful. Always good to talk to you, Nick. Nick, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be doing what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I spend most of my time facilitating rooms, so groups of people, usually teams of people,
Mhm.
on a whole range of topics, but it's usually around the people stuff.
Yeah.
I coach individuals
Mhm.
and I run little training sessions, similar to where I first met you.
Mhm.
So, hey, background, I certainly didn't start here. I actually trained as a phys ed teacher. So
Hmm.
went to uni, did the thing, taught in classrooms for 3 years. I went, "Oh, this is Mug's game. I'm out of here." Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, tough crowd.
Mm.
The learning piece for me is carried all the way through, but it actually took me about 10, maybe 12 years to get to the point where I went, that's what I love doing and that's what I'm
Mhm.
good at.
Mhm.
So my journey took me through obviously working in schools initially. I then worked for a job agency for a little bit.
Mhm.
I worked in a tennis centre, ran a tennis centre for a bit. I worked for a registered training organisation. So I did
Yep.
that, training and assessing stuff, going
Mhm.
out to workplaces,
Mhm.
benchmarking against blah, blah, blah. And then realized, actually, I don't like this kind of planning, marking, structure, curriculum thing. I want to just talk to people. I
Mm.
want to be able to engage with people and help them solve their problems. So I started my own business about 18 years ago, a little sole trader, doing a bit of this and a bit of that. And over the years have kind of just
Mhm.
continually narrowed the focus into the people side of things because that's where most people get stuck or blocked or don't know how to approach
Mm.
things. And most of us aren't taught.
Mm.
It's not part of the curriculum at school. It's not part of what people engage with in a lot of the technical stuff that they learn. So um, the whole YooHoo piece, that kind of business name that you referenced, it's good. It's a play on words. It's really about who are you,
Yep.
and who are you when it comes to the team of people that you're leading. Because part of the leadership is adjusting one's approach to suit the needs of
Mm.
the group that you're with. So yeah, I've been with YooHoo for almost 5 years now.
Mhm.
And one of our kind of core slogans is guide by the side. So it's not coming in and saying, here are the things that you need to do, go and do this, go and do that. It's exploring questions that enable the person to be able to go, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And therefore they're kind of embodying the learnings as they go.
I love that. Guide by the side. I might have to steal and adapt that one. Nick, how is it that people became your thing? Like that working with people can be very, very challenging and
Mm.
extremely rewarding, and it's not for everybody. So I wonder for you, what was that moment when you realized, okay, this really works for me. This is what I enjoy doing the most.
Yeah, good question. Combination of things, I think. One was process of elimination,
Mhm.
which was, I don't know, maybe a decade's worth of process of elimination,
Yep.
experiencing the pain where you try something and just go, I'm just no good at this.
Yep.
Um, the school of hard knocks,
Mhm.
working out, actually, no, I can't do that, or I'm not overly effective, so I need to try something else.
Mm.
For me, the application has been kind of different, having worked in a couple of different sectors and industries, even going back into an organization, working as a leader in a business.
Mhm.
I did that prior to actually coming on to work with YooHoo.
Mhm.
So you get to apply some of the skills and techniques and realize, That's why that's difficult for that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, those sorts of things. And then more recently, in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, actually learning from a psychometric perspective. So some of the
Mhm.
tools that you can use online.
Mhm.
What are my actual strengths? So what's
Mhm.
in me? What's kind of a natural talent that gives me energy? And how can I just double down on using those? And my top two strengths, this is a Clifton Strengths tool that we use,
Mhm.
developer and relator. They're
Mm.
both relationship building strengths. Developer is, coach, trainer, facilitator, teacher.
Yep.
And the relator part is essentially this. It's the interactions you have with one other person. Get me
Mm.
in a room, I'm okay, but
Yep.
I'll need to have introvert time before and after.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a combination of learning from the failures and things that don't work, and then just being able to narrow down on the things that give you life and energy,
Yeah.
and then just dialing those up as much as you can. So I try and spend most of my time actually interacting with people,
Mhm.
as opposed to doing all the periphery stuff around the
Mhm.
outside,
Mhm.
and that seems to work well.
You could be describing me, Nick.
Yeah, right.
Very, very similar indeed. I, um,
It's
I
the two
find it.
nicks.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's the relationship stuff that really works for me. That's the stuff that I really enjoy, and it's the stuff that I see the biggest change in others come from. As they start to
Mm,
develop those relationships and they start to learn from the relationships in and around them. And there's so many, every interaction we have is a relationship.
yeah.
Some relationships are developed and they last for a long time, and some are very fleeting. They're the people we meet at the supermarket and we move on.
Uh-huh.
And I find it fascinating when I dig down with clients, for example, when we're talking things like leadership, or even if we take it right a step back and we talk about managing your team and what that looks like for them on a day to day basis. It's an interesting concept for them to understand that these are ongoing relationships that they're having and that they need to be putting work into
Mhm.
those relationships. But they're also very big mirrors. Many of the important relationships we have are amazing mirrors for us. And when we begin to unpack that as a business owner and how that's showing up in our team, it's a great point of learning for us if we're open to it.
Yep, spot
Mm.
on. Yep,
Mm.
learning through observation, and it's often the things that grate you or
Yes.
grind on you a little bit. And it's one of those little sayings that you hear again and again. It's showing up. Something in you is the thing that's annoying. It's actually
Hmm.
true.
It
It
truly is.
doesn't mean that you are that or you have
Yep.
that thing, but
Yep.
it's just there's a little trigger point,
Hmm.
and that's the key, I think, to be able to
Mm.
be the best authentic version of you, but in a way that's adaptive and allied to those that you're working with and for, and those that are in your care, if you like.
Absolutely. Now, what we're talking about today is leadership. And I think there's a lot of, well, firstly, I want to acknowledge there's lots of different styles of leadership. And I think often I have conversations with trade business owners that will come to me and say, I want to learn how to be a leader. And I don't think there's any one linear path in understanding leadership and what that looks like for you. And so I wondered, Nick, if you could talk to what leadership is as a whole. I mean, what essentially is it and what could it look like for varying business owners?
Yeah, absolutely. The age old question, what is
So
it?
true.
What isn't it? I don't think there's a hard and fast rule necessarily. I think there are useful rules of thumb.
Hmm.
So one of the contrasting components is leadership and management,
Hmm.
and what's the difference? Actually, you need to be both. You
Hmm.
manage a system and processes. You manage risk and all the things that happen day to day, and then leadership is about people. Usually, it's
Mm.
about showing the way. It's about initiating and influencing change. It's about bringing people along for the journey,
Mhm.
overcoming the issues, building trust, dealing with healthy conflict, those sorts of things. So it's really about leadership is about how you show up and
Mm.
what you are embodying in the moment that's relevant to the context that you're in. So,
Yep.
you and I having a chat now is very different to if I had a small group of people that I was working with this afternoon around
Mhm.
a particular issue.
Yep.
How I have to show up is different based on the context. And that's where, if you're a strong leader, you're able to do that. It's the adaptive part of
Mm.
leadership.
I think that's one of those things, and commonly I see it or I relate it back to being a parent. No children are the same. And so the way we parent our children involves little tweaks.
Yep.
And so essentially we might be gunning for the same goal, the same outcome, but we do it a little bit differently with every child we have. Same can
Mm.
be said for our team, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's that adaptive part. We need to be, as a good leader, adaptive to the kind of person we have in front of us, their personality traits, the way they learn, the way they understand our messaging so that we can lead them through whatever it might be that we're trying to lead them through. But that's a bit of a myth. I think that, well, sorry, I think from a trade business owner's perspective, they feel as though they can walk in and lead everybody the same way and it's going to work 100% of the time.
Yep. Yep. No. And I think intuitively you and your listeners at the moment are probably going, "Oh, yeah, of course. Of course that
Mm,
doesn't work." And I think the family unit analogy is a perfect one. You have to approach your wife or your husband in a very different way to what you would approach your 20-year-old,
yep.
as was the case with me last week. I have a 20-year-old as of last week.
Congratulations.
And the approach there, vastly different to even his slightly younger brother.
Yeah.
But that in and itself is leadership. It's about being authentic to you,
Yep.
knowing who you are, but being able to adapt that to the person or the situation that presents. Because you have to be in a relationship
Mhm,
like that. There has to be something that is transactional from an energy perspective,
mhm,
and you also have to be able to adapt in kind of any moment to be able to overcome an issue, to motivate them, to get them to land on a solution that they've been grappling with, rather than just kind of telling them what to do. It's about
mm.
building their ability to be able to find those solutions from themselves.
I can remember as, maybe not as a child, but perhaps as a teen, often hearing my parents say, "Oh, he's just a natural leader," or "He's a real born leader." Do you think that that's true, Nick? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, look, I think some people find it easier to
Mm,
be a natural leader, but actually, you learn how to be an effective leader through cuts and scars and bruises and the pain of showing up again and again, trying something, and then every now and again it working and
yep,
going, "Oh, yes." Uh, but yeah, leaders aren't born; they're made.
yeah.
Is kind of a catch line, and I think that's definitely true.
Mm, yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Mm.
So, as a trade business owner, I've gone from a man in a van, I've put on a couple of tradies, and they're working under me, and I'm finding it really frustrating and quite overwhelming. What are some of the common mistakes you see in people when they're in early on in their journey learning how to be a leader, Nick?
Mm. Well, I think one of the key challenges that people find is that they try and replicate or be someone else. So
Yeah.
they'll think, and we'll often do this in sessions or coaching calls where we'll get people to consider someone that they've looked up to, a past leader,
Mhm.
and then to consider which parts of their style they've taken on as their own. So you can adapt, you can use
Mhm.
things that you've seen, but it's about trying it on. Like you have to be consistent to who you are first,
Mm.
knowing how you're showing up and what brings out your best,
Mhm.
and then do those things naturally, and then work on the rub, work on the things that don't necessarily work for the situation or the people that you're in. So, it's the age old things like know your principles and values, know what's
Yep.
most important to you, and then articulate those to
Mhm.
your people. Doesn't matter who they are, how old they are, whether they're a first year apprentice or whether you've had them by their side for 10 or 15 years. Being able to articulate those things and build trust or trusting relationships.
Mhm.
There's that old adage of if you want to be trusted, you have to be trustworthy. And as a
Mm.
leader, it's actually your job to go first in
Yep.
those sort of situations.
Yep.
I know in one of the sessions that I ran with you, actually, one of the first pieces that I talk about is I had this kind of silly image up on a screen of Ben Stiller that kind of looks a little bit like me, less so since the buzz cut.
It's a
um,
great exercise.
but take the piss. Have some light-hearted kind of banter about who you
Mm.
are and what's important to you.
Mhm.
Do it in a way that's showing your authenticity and speaking to the trust part of how you build relationships, which
Mm.
which is that. It's that vulnerability about just being you, and you find that you'll get the same in response
Mm.
more often than not. Not always, but mostly that will be what happens.
Can we talk about vulnerability for a moment? Because I think often Particularly the men that are listening. Sorry, fellas. Sometimes we have to be a bit stereotypical to get the messaging out, but I think men often feel like that means they've got to show up and tell all their dirty little secrets. And
Mm.
that's not vulnerability to me, but I'd love your perspective, Nick.
Yeah. Vulnerability harming. This is something that's been about for a while now. I say about. It was made popular by a lady called Brene Brown,
Yes.
a Texan researcher who speaks about vulnerability. She speaks about sympathy and trust and building empathy and those sorts of things. But vulnerability is about sharing without the fear of
Mm,
someone, giving you something in return that you didn't expect. So it's that psychological safety. I'm comfortable sharing something about myself, and I respect and trust the fact that you won't use that against me later on.
mm,
So vulnerability can be a whole heap of things. It can be a conversation like this, where I haven't prepared a great list of kind of talking points, but I trust that the situation is going to be okay, and that the conversation will flow.
yep.
Um, Vulnerability can be something as simple as, I need to tell Nicole something
Mm,
about what happened yesterday, and I'm pretty comfortable that I know what it is that I need to say, and the vulnerability is actually saying it,
mm,
not just kind of pushing it over there, or what we call artificial harmony,
mhm,
because then those things just fester. So you have to be vulnerable to be able to share maybe the impact
mhm,
someone's choices had on you, or
mhm.
maybe on the client, or someone else in the team.
Yep.
Um, One of the other components of leadership, I think, is taking care of those in your care. So if you
Mm,
think about the team that you're leading, they're often only as good as your leadership enables them to be, and part of that is raising questions, and questions is a really good frame,
mm,
rather than raising things and telling, "You did this the other day, this is what happened, don't do it again."
mhm,
That's not really vulnerability, that's just
mm,
telling. Vulnerability might be saying, "Hey, yesterday, remember when we were sitting next to Mrs. Smith and she said blah, and then you did blah, and remember what happened?"
mhm,
The vulnerability is opening up the conversation, not knowing where it might go,
mm,
but knowing the conversation in and of itself is actually the thing that's going to kind of lead that person to a point of having an aha moment, or even just stopping and thinking, "Oh, yeah, no, I hadn't considered that."
mm. So often I think that the issues that we see have come from a place of not considering the impact of somebody's actions. We blindly make choices every single day that serve us as a human without thinking about others. Some
Yeah,
would say, label it selfishness. I don't necessarily. I just think we get very wrapped up in our own way of whatever's happening for us.
of course,
So
yeah.
I think then that vulnerability in highlighting those circumstances, and for me, the big thing here is the questioning.
Mm,
You can do so much, have such a big impact through questioning rather than telling.
yeah.
I shut down when somebody's telling me something, but if I'm being questioned, then I'm also thinking as I go. It's such a powerful tool, Nick.
Absolutely, yeah, and the question, doesn't demonstrate that you think you've got the answer. So
Mm,
if you talk about vulnerability, the person that you are asking the question to is far more likely to be vulnerable in their answer,
mhm.
because you haven't told them what you think. You're
Yeah,
leaving it open.
yeah.
Yeah,
You get closer to the heart of the issue then as well, I think.
yeah, yeah,
Nick,
agreed.
trade business owners, this is just one of the, managing people at all is one of the toughest things that they do. It could be really easy to think that it's money, cash flow, it's marketing, it's any of the other hundreds of things that they do every day. But generally, the biggest frustration points that I speak actually to any business owner about is normally the people stuff.
Mm.
Where do we start when it comes to learning our own leadership style and how we can move through to a space of fostering our leadership abilities within the business to get better results for everybody involved?
Mm. Um, well, I think a first starting point, and what I would usually do in a coaching conversation, which is kind of the framework in my mind,
Mhm,
as you've asked that question, would be to do a bit of a retrospective. So we ask people to go back over your career and think about, what have been the flag moments, what have been the things that have occurred that have shaped how you think about what leadership is.
mhm,
So usually starts off with people that they've worked for that have been an arsehole or, that
Yes.
they haven't
Oh,
enjoyed. They're the ones that come to mind pretty
mm,
quickly. Those that have stewarded their time well. So people that they remember and go, oh, yeah, that was so good.
mm,
And then if you drill down into, so what did they do? What were the behaviors? What were the actions? What were the repeatable things that you would expect from that person? And often kind of curating a bit of a list, coming up with, 5 or 6 things for each of those, really good or really bad
mm,
experiences
mhm,
will assist someone in looking at, okay, well, maybe here are some behaviors that I want to try and replicate. Um, if they can line those up with what's most important to them, i.e., what do I value? What are the principles that lead me through each day?
mhm,
Um, and a principle can be something like I need to ask before telling, or it might be that I need to listen with the intent to understand, not
mhm.
be understood. So those little rules of thumb.
Yep.
Um, the other things to do would be to think about my patterns of work. So as I go through my day, where do I have high energy, low energy? Where are the moments when I'd prefer to be working on the tools rather than be having, a conversation with someone? So
Mm,
thinking through patterns of work, ways of working, and from that you can often curate a little bit of a starting list of what's most important to your style.
mhm.
The other thing to do, which is vulnerable by definition, is to ask people,
Yes.
particularly those that work with you
Mhm,
on a regular basis. What are the things that I do that make you feel most motivated or empowered? Or
mm,
the flip side of that, what are 1 or 2 things that if I didn't do, you would feel more committed to or engaged with the work that you're doing?
mhm.
Now that's tough often, but you'll find that you'll get some of the best answers. And if people are willing to be able to share what they think, you'll generally find that the actions that you then work through, or the reflecting and thinking that you do, will
Mhm.
assist you in having even in your mind. Here are 2 things that I have to stop doing. Here are 2 things that I have to start doing, and maybe here's 1 or 2 that I continue.
Mm.
Um, yeah, lots of different ways in which you can approach that, but the key is to have time to reflect and think about it. What worked well
It's
out of that day?
it's a great point that you make. One of the exercises that we have in the program for various people at various times is that reflection piece at the end of the day. What did I do well? Who did I lead well? Who do I need to step in with tomorrow? Because we don't take time as business owners. We're generally running from work home to the kids or the family, or now I've got to go off and quote, now I've got to invoice, and I'm doing, doing, doing. But I'm never taking that time to learn from my own behaviors and patterns in the business.
Yep, 100%.
Mm.
One of the little mental models that we use quite frequently is called the third space.
Oh, I
Um,
love this concept.
oh, you've come across this one
Yeah,
before.
I
It's a
have. It's
cracker, isn't
great.
it?
Yeah, it really is.
But yeah, the reflect, rest, and reset.
Mm.
That can happen in the car. Can happen
Mm.
in the ute on the way home. Can be done in 5 minutes. If you've got 20 minutes drive, even better.
Mhm.
But those 3 questions. What worked well, what didn't, what can I change for next time or tomorrow? And out of that, you'll often have a person or a conversation that becomes really clear in your mind.
Mm.
I need to go and have a chat to Chris about that thing and ask him what he thinks.
Mm.
The reset is thinking about what it is that you're most intentional at going to. You can do this in between. Like if you've got multiple job sites, for example, and you're going from one site to the other, you can do the reset phase. So
Mm.
you're thinking about how can I be intentional to the people that I'm going to and what are their expectations of me. So then you're not just coming in, all guns blazing or on your agenda. You're thinking
Yeah.
about it through the perspective of those that you are leading.
Yep. I just love it. It's the best concept.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things I see really frequently is this tendency for passive aggressive business owners. So for those listening, it's kind of, well, the way I see it demonstrated often is I bite my tongue, but it's building up inside, it's building up inside, and all of a sudden I snap. And the problem I see, Nick, as I'm sure that you've well experienced, is that it creates a lack of trust in our team members. And you were talking about trust earlier and how important that is,
Mm.
and how vulnerability can help create and foster that trust.
Yeah.
Or somebody that recognizes that pattern in themselves, they're avoiding conversations, but it's building up and those little frustrations are getting on top of them and all of a sudden they explode. Could you maybe talk to some other ways we could approach that if we are that particular kind of personality, or maybe even what to look for if that is someone and they're not quite aware of their own behavior just yet.
Mm. Yep. There's a whole stack of stuff on being assertive, which
Hmm.
is obviously what we want to aim to become. Not passive and not passive aggressive on
Yeah.
the inside. But I think the passive aggressiveness is something that most of us just fall into and
Hmm.
then have those moments of realization. Um, Being passive aggressive, I guess, is the thing that people do to avoid uncomfortable conversations or avoid a necessary conversation with someone. And they think if they're just able to kind of poke this or make that kind of silly suggestion over here or say something that's undermining or just belittles or makes fun of that person, that they're going to catch on and go, oh, I need to do that thing that Nick's inferring I do. 99% of the time it doesn't work though. It will undermine and minimize the relationship that you have.
Mm.
So one of the frameworks that we use again and again and again, and not often kind of draw it out, but to kind of have it in the mind because you can step through things like the reflect, rest, and reset one that we
Hmm.
we looked at before. It's kind of a pyramid of five behaviours. It's based on the book by a guy called Patrick Lencioni called The
Hmm.
Five Dysfunctions of a Team.
Hmm.
And interestingly, it starts with vulnerability-based trust at the bottom. If you're able to trust, so build trust, so do the hard work that we talked about before, then what you should be able to do with people is to be able to engage in healthy conflict.
Mm.
So the word healthy conflict in and of itself sometimes just makes people go, oh, no, I don't want to do any of that. But actually healthy conflict is saying what's on your mind and doing it in a way where you're just noting a difference of opinion, a different
Yep.
idea, or actually, no, I see it differently, and not feel as if you need to load that with all this kind of emotion or what we sometimes call a convincer strategy. I have to convince
Hmm.
them they're wrong and I'm right. So
Yeah.
actually, we could both be right in this
Yep.
situation. So healthy conflict is about being able to engage in the conversation of ideas or
Hmm.
impacts of behavior, perhaps, to land on something that both people in the conversation can commit to.
Hmm.
And the commitment occurs if people feel as if they've been heard. So healthy conflict often requires the person engaging in it to say, so here's how I saw that situation. Here's how I saw it play out. I'd be really curious to hear how you think that went. So you can colour literally two stories
Hmm.
and then find the similarities and differences. And often if you're question orientated, so you're being more ask, less tell, then the person that you are sharing that conversation with is going to be far more open to committing to whatever you agree to
Mm.
in the conversation. And then if you've both agreed, i.e., committed, then accountability is far far easier. It's not
Mm.
about it's not about you as the business owner holding that person accountable. It's actually, well, we're both agreed to it, and therefore it's kind of a peer to peer accountability. Um, which it works a treat most of the time. It works
Mm.
really well in teams, actually.
Yeah.
If you have multiple people around, at the table or having a little toolbox in the morning, being able to have that conversation and engage in um, those points of difference, it will let people know that it's actually okay to have a difference of opinion. You're not going to be belittled or held accountable or have someone that responds in a passive aggressive way.
Yeah. Yeah. So important. Like how, or what kind of role does curiosity play in leadership?
Oh, curiosity. Love that word. It's one of our YooHoo values.
Mhm.
It kind of underpins the style and approach that we take. Curiosity means that you're actually more interested in what someone else thinks than what you have to say. And it only works if you're genuine.
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah. Often sharing your opinion last is a
Hmm.
good sign of curiosity. As the leader of a team or a small business, going last is actually a really smart move
Mm.
because you're able to hear where other people are and what they think and how they feel. And you're often able to just kind of organize those things in your head and then summarize. So, what I've heard is da da da
Hmm.
da da. So curiosity assists that. It assists in engaging and motivating people because they feel as if you actually care for
Yeah.
them or about what they think and feel. Because let's be honest, you can't disassociate your work role or life from your home life. That the whole notion of work-life balance is it's a misnomer, really. You have life and you have a work hat, you have a home hat, you have a footy player hat, you have a whatever else. Um, so yes, being able to align those things together through curiosity is really important. One of the vehicles that we encourage most when it comes to curiosity is being more coach-like.
Mm.
So being a coach, essentially, a coach
Yep.
asks questions. Less so in a sporting context, because a
Yep.
coach will often direct and kind of, do the thing.
Mhm.
But in a work situation, being more coach-like is about leading with questions, leading with genuine curiosity, being curious about what that person feels and thinks and believes, and what's led them to think that maybe what they did was a good idea.
Mm.
And rather than berating them for them telling you what they think, actually being genuinely curious about, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
And then the follow-up question could be about, so how could we do that differently next time? How
Yep.
can I support you better? How could you give yourself a couple of extra minutes to think about that and maybe not do that blah blah blah? Uh,
Yeah.
requires genuine curiosity, I think.
Yeah.
Um, the only other piece to say in that is for you to be genuinely curious, you need to be humble.
Yes. Great
And,
point.
and humble it's not about subordinating yourself to
Mhm.
others. Uh, humble is about believing that actually what you have to say is just what you have to say. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean it's right. It's thinking about yourself less,
Mhm.
um, and thinking about, the team or the group or the business that you have put around you, because they're really only going to be as good as what you are with them around you.
I think that's the most important point you've made all day. Thank you,
Oh, there
Nick.
you go.
Nick, if there was one thing that you would like every business owner to know about how they show up as a leader for themselves and for the team that they surround themselves with, what would it be?
Uh, oh goodness, narrowing it down to one. Look, I think one of the things that's most important in this era is busyness.
Mm.
Uh, like the world's in a weird spot at the moment, and the impact that that has on all of us is that we're a little bit more anxious. Things are a bit brittle.
Mhm.
They didn't work. Things don't work the way that they used to. You can't say, right, I'm going to do these 6 things and that will be the outcome. You have this kind of non-linear bend where, oh, hang on, we're going there now.
Yeah.
So part of being a good leader, and keep in mind that leadership is about people. It's about kind of
Mhm.
stewarding your flock or your crowd or the people that you've employed. It's making sure that you're not predicating that. You're not driving busyness and this kind of frantic nature throughout the business. So focusing on what's most important. Uh, like it sounds really simple, but it's actually
Mm.
something that I find most people forget about.
Mm.
I mean, that word priority is
Yep.
singular, as opposed to we have 19 priorities that we have to
Yeah.
finish today. Actually, no. What's the priority,
Yeah.
and then how can we clarify what people's purpose and tasks and the functions that they perform? What's going to lead to that? So
Love
I
that.
think busyness is one thing. Um, I think the other thing is making sure that you are being adaptive to the context. So it could be the job site that you're on. It might be what happened to Tim or Ben yesterday. It might be, oh, hang on, that person hasn't actually done that type of work before, and I'm expecting them to do something that they actually haven't got the experience in. So adaptive, which is thinking kind of outside in.
Yep.
It's almost the opposite to authenticity, where being authentic is inside out.
Yep.
Outside in is considering what are all the factors that I have to take into account, and how
Mhm.
do I have to adapt my expectations to the people in my care at that time. And to do that, you have to be curious. You have to
Mhm.
be kind of switched on and observant to what people are showing you and
Mm.
and saying.
So important, Nick. This is a fascinating topic that we could talk about all day long. Instead, what I think would be really helpful is if any of our listeners need help with the people stuff, where can they find you?
Oh, that is a very good question. We are online on LinkedIn, on Instagram.
Hmm.
Yoo-hoo Group is our business name. Our web address is the W is yoohoo.com.au. You'll
Hmm.
find us easily there. And
I'll
we
make sure
are,
all of that is in the show notes as well.
yeah, beautiful.
Fabulous. Well, Nick, thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed. I could talk about leadership all day. I think it's an amazing part of our business journeys and one that is often neglected until we find ourselves at a pressure point. It's kind of that afterthought that we have. How did I wind up here? What do I need to do about it to fix it? And I think
That's
if we
right.
take a really proactive approach, we've got a great opportunity as business owners to really create an amazing outcome, not just for the business, but for ourselves and our team around us. Nick,
Well said.
thank you. That was phenomenal. Really enjoyed it.
Pleasure, pleasure.
Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Tradies in Business podcast with Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business, and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.